Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning. How you doing, everybody? It is Thursday, January 19th, 2017, inching ever closer. I can't believe it. Here we are. Wow, I don't know what to tell you. I guess one more day. I had to tweet out the warning this morning. I guess today is the day that Barack Obama comes for all your guns. I don't think there's much time left. I don't think he can get it done before noon tomorrow. Although the assertion always was that it was going to be an extra legal action. So I suppose he could surprise everybody and do it tomorrow afternoon when everybody thinks they're safe. I don't know. Jade Helm has to get started. The guns have to be taken. Everybody has to turn in their Obama phones, I suppose, unless Trump has somebody in mind for Secretary of confiscating all that stuff. It's a busy day. But we've got plenty to cover. Nonetheless, things are exploding, of course, because we're getting closer to inaugurating Donald Trump. And so as a result, everything's falling apart faster than anticipated. The cabinet hearings, the cabinet nomination hearings are going to hell in, I guess, it's that handbasket that we used to keep the deplorable people in. Because these things are falling apart faster than we can keep track of. A horrible day for the nominees. Not that anybody really noticed out there in real America where we're all driving around in pickup trucks. But we'll try and catch you all up on all of that stuff. Well, you know, our listeners probably know all of this stuff anyway. But it makes us feel something. And that's really all we need in this world. Just please make me feel something, anything, to get together and discuss these issues. It's been a week. Anyway, we'll take it one day at a time. In fact, we'll take it 1 minute at a time. Turning to Bill in Portland, Maine, who begins our show, as he always does, with the morning tweet. Daily Kos Radio is live. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, previews the Trump administration by playing an air raid siren for 2 hours. Now, that's a show. Maybe I ought to just go ahead and do that. That would get me through it anyway. All right. Well, plenty to talk about. And today being Thursday, I believe on our crazy, wacky schedule, it's a Greg Dworkin day. We couldn't swing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday normal thing, but we got a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday thing going on. So we'll have an eye out for him. Let me see. His raft of stories have not floated down the river like so many logs on their way to the sawmill. Perhaps one might say. All right. However, there's plenty in pocket. I noticed I haven't responded to this one yet, and we should live tweet this one on the air. Whose message was this? I just saw this at the last second as I was getting ready. Where are we? Steve Shale, who well, look, he's got a blue check mark, so he's important to a lot of you. And let's see, he lists so many things in his bio here, the little space they give you to write these things. Florida man, first of all. Obama, Florida boss 08 and senior advisor in 2012. That gives you some idea about that. He is responding to John Harwood's tweet saying, inaugural chair Barack, not Barack Obama, but Tom Barack, right? The chair of the Trump presidential inaugural committee, says, if it were up to Donald Trump, and isn't it, he'd be jogging the whole 1.5 miles of the parade route. Steve, of course, notes, I would happily bet $20 at one of Trump's casinos, or anywhere else for that matter, that there is no way he could jog the entire parade route. I say, go for it, Trump a canoe. Right? You do the William Henry Harrison thing. Make short work of your presidency. I encourage you to give it a try. Who knows what you're capable of doing? I notice you don't walk your golf courses. I know that much. And from what I hear, he has some difficulty with stairs. So I don't know if jogging a mile and a half, I don't know, maybe he's capable of it. I say test it. Push it to the limit. I have there's no reason I would want to hold you back from an accomplishment like that. Okay, income. I see now in my Skype the stories are beginning to flow in. That's good. Let me open up Pocket and try and catch up just briefly with a lightning roundup of what the hell's going on with the cabinet. I think top story today would be Rick Perry, who, as we all know, is an idiot. I'll just give you the full background. You'll remember, of course, when he was still actively running for president, and you'll remember the oops moment, that he was going to eliminate certain cabinet departments to try and downsize the government because he heard somewhere that was a hip thing that Republicans like to hear about. And he had 3 departments that he wanted to eliminate. Now, I have since forgotten the first 2. All I remember is the one that he didn't remember was number 3, the Department of Energy, and he had the oops moment. Now, of course, he's slated to be Secretary of that very same department. But the news of the day is that he was offered the job. And I don't know, that sort of also feels like a Steve Bannon thing where he did it like, that will make people, that'll put people in a tizzy. He wanted to eliminate it. Let's make him the secretary of that department. And he happily accepted the job, it turns out, because he thought, like I would venture to say most Americans, think that the Department of Energy is about oil and gas. And maybe coal. He might throw that in there. So, and he would, although for some reason he thought the job was being an ambassador around the world to promote American oil and gas interests. And that doesn't even, I don't think that comports with most people's understanding of the Department of Energy. Doesn't matter because the Department of Energy doesn't really handle that stuff anyway, as you may have learned along the way. Chiefly responsible for nuclear energy and the maintenance and safeguarding of the nuclear weapons cache that we maintain. I don't know if you all know that we have nuclear weapons. This country has nuclear weapons, and Donald Trump gets them tomorrow. And Rick Perry is the guy in charge of helping him maintain that arsenal. And he didn't know that was the job. I just thought it was interesting that, one, he didn't know what the department did when he thought it would be a good idea to prove his presidential bona fides by saying he wanted to eliminate it. 2, that also means he did not know what the job was when he agreed to accept it. And 3, now that he has accepted it and gotten briefed on what it actually does, he comes out today to say, hey, maybe I now retract my interest in, my expressed interest in eliminating this department. Not just because this is the department that pays my rent from now on, but because I didn't understand what it was when I wanted to eliminate it. I didn't understand what it was when I said, yes, I'll do it. And I am not, he didn't say this, but I guess we could probably surmise that he's not 100% sure what it is now that he's doing it. Of course, he's not doing it yet. He has yet to be confirmed. That and a number of other problems cropped up with the nominees yesterday, but let's bring Greg in and see if that's not part of the summation for today. If it's not, I'll take care of it later. You concentrate on what you've got today, Greg. Good morning.
So it's interesting. I have a very smart mate, and she says to me as we're watching kind of the nightly news summary of all the different hearings that are going on at the same time, and somebody on Twitter observes, the Republicans thought they could jam and flood the zone with all these different incredibly bad picks.
Yeah.
And nobody would notice because there's too many, because that's Trump's scandal defense. Oh, you think that's a scandal? How about these 17 others? Come back to me when you chase them all down. I got another 19 here that I'll put on the table, and people will just look over here instead of there. So you throw all the cabinet members together and do the hearings one after the other, and the mind reels at how incompetent Ben Carson is, because maybe they told him, oh, housing is just like health, except housing. Oh, okay, I can handle that. And then, Rick Perry has ideas about something that he's perfectly happy, as you point out, to run for president over, that turns out to be completely bogus. That doesn't say anything bad about him. Why would it? And then Betsy DeVos comes out and talks about guns and bears in a way that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And all these things are happening, and social media is catching them all, and they are not disappearing. And everybody has a good sense of what's going on here. That's what I meant the past couple of days when I was talking about narratives and story arcs. Sometimes you miss the details, but you get the sense. And the cabinet selections are a perfect example of that. So I tried to inarticulately articulate this to the mate, and she turns and says, "You know what this is like?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Trump thinks that like the cabinet is like ambassadors,
Yeah.
You just put whoever you want, wherever you want. Maybe they earned it. Maybe 5 billion reasons why you might pick Betsy DeVos. Who cares? What difference does it make? They don't really do anything.
He's certainly not going to listen to any of them.
Yeah. And
he
who
doesn't
cares?
put advisors there. He puts...
Right. We'll put a bunch of figureheads and they'll be happy and they'll get all the prestige. It's not like it. I mean, what could go wrong?
Nothing. I mean, it's like casting a movie.
Yeah.
And he said so a number of times that he wants people who have a certain look for certain jobs, and you can't be too short and you can't have, not enough hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, is there anything that you would need a handlebar mustache for?
No, he doesn't like mustaches. You're out. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, like now, if like Texas they had a railroad commissioner, he'd be like, railroads, right? That you're the guy who ties women to the tracks.
Right.
That I could. That's not a handlebar so much as a little thin, whatever. The point is, he likes his people to have a certain look, and I guess big and dumb with glasses is the one you want for energy. And surprising no one, Rick Perry had no idea what he was getting into, and I mean, I'm glad he's shown the capacity to figure it out. That's good. I mean, he's not still out there saying, "Nah, well, I think it's still about gas, and I'm going to just go do that." He's willing to do what the job is supposed to be. I don't know how well he can do it, though.
So, from a concrete perspective, it's actually not as awful as it sounds, although it is pretty awful.
Okay.
Because consider the following. Let's say, and this is not a defense of Trump in any way, shape, or form, Rick Perry, in some ways, is more qualified to lead a governmental department that's cabinet level than the CEOs that Trump picked, or in Betsy DeVos's case, I don't know, what do you call her? I don't know where her expertise comes from. Or, let's say, a Ben Carson.
I could see that. I mean,
and the reason is simply this. Let me just give you an example.
I will let you do that.
Okay, cool.
All right, here I go.
Think of an example real quick to tell David.
Letting you know.
HHS has 80,000 employees.
It does.
And I remember at the time, both for Homeland Security and HHS, when Obama, and even before him, George W. Bush, was thinking about various candidates, governors always came to the top. And the thinking was, governors at least have had some executive experience in managing large numbers of employees without getting sucked into the details of trying to do everything themselves. Now, in Rick Perry's case, you could argue he's great at that because he has no clue at the details.
Right. There's nowhere for you to put him.
Right. So, in that sense, at least he has some experience. Texas is a big state.
It is.
And it is true that maybe the lieutenant governor does all the work, but he's been that too, I think, right? Wasn't he a lieutenant governor before he was governor?
Yeah, I think he was. That's true.
So you do learn some executive skills there, and so it's not, he's one of those guys that says, hey, he doesn't know anything. You put him there, and at least he survives. At least he keeps his head above water.
Yeah.
As opposed to a Betsy DeVos who has none of that.
Right. By the way, I would
what's your executive experience? Well, I had a nice chat with with what's her name, Colin Campbell Brown.
Yeah, I'm pro execution,
right? And pro gun, and what else do you need? But no executive experience.
No.
So how do you handle personnel? How do you handle different competing factions within your subordinate group here? How do you do all of that if you haven't really had like decades of experience doing it? And that's why Ben Carson and Betsy DeVos look as bad as they do.
Yes. And they do. They do look bad. I would bet, by the way.
Bad, right.
That,
so anyway, so that's my thought.
Okay.
And we know this. We step back. We look at this and say, gee, this is stressing me out.
Yes.
And you know what? We're not alone. There's this great Washington Post poll today. Not great because of the numbers. They're terrible. Not great because of the situation. They're terrible. But don't feel isolated. You are not alone. Stressed out over Trump's election? Most Clinton supporters say yes. A large majority of Clinton supporters say they're stressed out over Trump's election as president, a sign that anxieties from the long and toxic campaign have persisted during the Trump honeymoon. Well, we talked about that because his story arc isn't helping us. A new Washington Post poll finds 65% of people who wanted Clinton to win the election say Trump's victory has increased the amount of stress in their lives, including nearly 4 in 10 who say their stress has grown a great deal. 39% say it's really bad. May I congratulate, and you are one of them, those 39% who get it? Because, yeah.
Yes, it's not good.
No. 1/3 of Clinton backers say Trump's election hasn't made a difference in their typical stress level.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
1/3 of Clinton backers, you know, I guess hate all politicians, and we're picking, you know, least worst choice.
Oh, yes.
And so you have to have somebody, and we don't like Trump, so whatever. But most of the country wasn't like that. They actually saw this as the important, pivotal thing that it was, even if, you know, maybe you got it right, maybe you got it wrong, maybe you saw it from a different point of view, whatever you want to say. And so if you didn't win this one, it matters a whole lot more than, let's say, Obama-Romney.
Yes. Well, it did.
I mean, if Romney had won, I don't think that – I can't speak for you, but I don't think that I'd have the pit in the stomach, this is awful kind of feeling. I'd have disappointment.
Yes. That's true. Well, yeah. This particular level of anxiety is a new one, and I'm not really sure what to call it.
Right. Anyway, I'm just telling you, you're not alone. I'm not alone. A lot of people feel that.
Well, that's good. I hope they're all, I don't know what, listening, subscribing.
Yeah. Right.
I guess.
52% of the general public, not just Clinton voters, said it doesn't make a difference. And 35% say it does. So that's like 1/3 of the country overall, and 2/3 of Clinton voters are really unhappy about this, and that's going to persist. And there's nothing about the transition, which, as you know, in the polls is extremely unpopular relative to other presidents. There's nothing happening that's assuaging that sense of anxiety.
No.
So we'll all have to come up with our own coping mechanism. Some of it will be resistance. Some of it will be, you know, concentrating on just the thing that I could, you know, concentrate on. Maybe it's stopping whatever Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Trump are thinking about in terms of vaccines, and trying to keep it nonpartisan. Maybe it's concentrating on Betsy DeVos and trying to keep guns out of schools. I mean, there's specific things, concrete things that we can work on that I think would help us. And I think that highlights the point that James Downey was saying the other day when we were looking at the fact that if you give concrete things to Americans, they say, no, we don't want what Trump is doing. But if he gives out generics and vague stuff, then it comes much closer to 50-50.
Okay. Well,
so that's the background, and it's not just us. I mean, it's not just liberals. It's not just progressives. This is from The American Interest, which is a conservative magazine, and it allows you 1 free click per month. And I decided to click on this one.
All right. Oh yes, they are. I know them.
Yeah.
The 1 free click guys. All right. What do they tempt you with?
Truth in the age of Trump.
Oh, well, that's...
Subheading. No one who backed Trump has any excuse for being surprised by what he does. We all know who and what he is.
All right. I'll agree.
It's about how Elliot Cohn fled town for the inauguration.
Oh.
He just wanted to be nowhere part of this.
Oh, yeah, right. No, I'm not going anywhere near it. Do you know they're giving the kids off... it's an excused absence for our kids in our school system tomorrow if they say they're going to the inauguration, although I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to the inauguration.
Right? But I'm not going. I am not going.
Nobody. I'm sure there's someone here who's going, but nobody I know who said that they're taking the day off. My kids are begging me, please, can't we just I can't even, I don't even want a mistake made where somebody thinks I'm taking them to this inauguration.
Right. Donald Trump has repeatedly revealed himself as a lying, crooked, narcissistic ignoramus. I mean, I just saw the first paragraph that said, you have to click at the and I'm thinking, okay, you got me. Click at this.
Right.
Donald Trump has repeatedly revealed himself as a lying, crooked, narcissistic ignoramus, incapable of generous thoughts or deeds, indeed, incapable of seeing beyond himself at all. The idea of that man living in Lincoln's house is nauseating, but he's the president, so what's one to do? More particularly, what are conservative intellectuals to do? He's answering your question. I can't.
Sorry, yeah.
Right? You know, I see myself neither as an intellectual nor a conservative. So I thought I'd read this, but I'll tell you, he's got the first right paragraph.
Well, yes, so far he is extremely smart.
Right.
Now, don't ruin it.
Don't ruin it. The most important thing is to speak the truth, indeed, to become somewhat fanatical on the subject. That means, to be sure, acknowledging such good as he or his administration may do. You know, maybe some increased defense spending from a conservative point of view. Smack at excessive regulation, stopping the persecution of little sisters of the poor, or charter schools. He got that one wrong. More important, we'll be calling him out every time he or his underlings lie. Every time he says he has a plan when he doesn't. Every time he jeers at a hero, like I will add, John Lewis, he may have picked a different hero. I don't care. Lewis denies having said any such thing. Every time he claims to have created jobs to which others gave birth, or denies an inflammatory statement that he did make. It means taking on Reince Priebus and the Kellyanne Conways when they lie at 11 a.m. to cover up the outrageous remarks the boss tweeted out 6 hours before. This is right, with a capital R. This is correct. This is where liberals and progressives can make common ground, you know.
I guess so, yeah, sure.
Bridge the difference between conservatives and progressives if we don't start fighting over who's the hero. Or what does it really mean about little sisters of the poor, agreeing to disagree on that particular topic? Maybe we find a way to bridge the gap the way Obama did and acknowledge it wasn't a bad idea in terms of what he came up with because we know we're going to argue over it, but do it anyway, you know? That's not bad. Mm-hmm. But the core is Trump is, in fact, a liar. And as the guy says as he's writing, he lies because it's in his nature to lie. This is core. This is something that we can accept and agree on, and you know the rest is detail. And by the way, again, for readers, listeners, I often probably annoy the heck out of David, but I always refer to his experience in Congress because there was a time that you could disagree and still get stuff done.
Yes, there was once. There was only one such time. It's true.
Right? It is. And so, you know, that's an ideal to get to. We're not looking at unanimity. We're not looking at agreement. We're looking at agree to disagree and get it done despite the fact that we know that we disagree.
Right.
That would be all right.
I would take it.
Especially if we had more votes than you. But, you know, that's the idea. The whole idea is that if you don't agree with me, you must be destroyed is, you know, bad.
Yes. Now it's not an invalid end point eventually, right?
It's a practical one, right?
Yeah, you just say, all right, well, I tried and now, not necessarily. Well, of course, you stop in between and say, all right, before we destroy you, we'll just outvote you, and that might also lead to your destruction, but that's your problem, not mine.
Right.
I don't know. We haven't yet gotten to. I don't think we've ever gotten to the point on the show where we just say, yeah, just destroy it all, light it all on fire.
We don't. And there are people that do. You know, the one of the people that I think is very good at annoying you is Chris Arnott. And one of the things that he said when he was talking to his McDonald's crew as he goes from town to town to town, he said that you know, one of the things that people didn't appreciate is they didn't just feel like they were losing at checkers. They felt like the rules were changing for checkers, so they were perfectly happy to kick the checkerboard. Just throw all the checkers on the floor because, you know, you're losing anyway. What do you got to lose? Okay, I can accept that, but there's a better way. We used to do it. We're striving to get it. And who are you going to negotiate with on the other side? And to me, I say, okay, I'm looking for the people who understand that Trump's lying because it's in his nature. This is one of these guys. There's others. And we've quoted them on the show, and we often look at conservatives who, quote, agree. They don't agree with us. They're still conservatives. But we agree on this core thing, and so at least we have some common language, you know, some common place to start.
Yeah.
And here's one of them. So he says it's not uncommon for politicians to a greater extent than most people to believe what they want to believe or change their take on reality depending upon what's convenient for them. But with Trump, this will to believe is pathological. His psyche is so completely besotted by Trump, there's no room for anything or anybody else. We won't change him. Nobody can. His children can soften his edges. But the beginning of wisdom will be to treat his office with respect and him with none. Because it'll achieve nothing, and because as a human being he deserves none.
Yes.
He'll remain erratic, he'll remain temperamental, vengeful, and deeply insecure. He'll mock John McCain, he'll denounce Gold Star parents, he'll snarl at an actor who spoofs him, he'll make fun of a crippled reporter. This is somebody whose core is empty and whose need for approbation is unlimited because the void is so complete.
Yes.
Now he gets to the cabinet.
Oh, there's more, okay.
Yeah? Such as Trump, what of his underlings? His cabinet officials are, after all, by and large Republican normal, some good, some mediocre, some odd. All of the political subordinates either know or will discover that the corruption of power works not by making you do or say outrageous things at first, but rather inducing you to persistently shade the truth. They'll find example pretending that we have a coherent policy towards Europe when we don't. They will excuse an unhealthy and possibly sinister relationship with Putin as realpolitik. They'll tell themselves they've gone to work for a man because they think they can affect him. But he's affecting them. And very few will resign in outrage because the compromises to their integrity will creep up on them. Very few. Right? So as Thomas More puts it in Robert Bolt's A Man for All Seasons, they will be like the man who, having taken an oath, is holding his own self in his own hands like water. When he opens his fingers, he can hope to find himself again. Yeah, and he talks about exceptions, military people. He hopes that sooner or later, this will happen. And then he says all of them, sooner or later, will find themselves at dinner parties where somebody say, Donald Trump's a louse. He cheats people. He's a bully. He knows nothing, cares little, whatever. These aren't opinions. These are demonstrable facts. The tables will go silent, and heads turn toward the political appointee at the table. And then they'll have to say something.
Yes.
And lying in bed the next day, they'll have to reflect on what they said. So, he's not merciful here. He was merciless in saying, you people who decided to work for him, it's on you. And that eventually the age of Trump will pass, but it's a slogging match until the end. And after that, this guy will come back to Washington. After the inaugural, he's not going. And that's basically it, and I totally get it. I totally understand where he's coming from. I understand how he feels.
Sure. I'm glad someone does feel that way. I don't know how influential he is.
I don't know, but it's nice to hear this from the other side, too. It's not just us.
Yes. Well, I wonder how many people he's going to be able to... Anybody who clicked on anything else in his magazine this month won't be able to read what he had to say, but luckily you can listen to the show.
Right.
Recommended to people that way.
And let me go from the general. I mean, this is kind of a general, Trump's a liar and it's bad and we have to deal with him. Let me go to the specific. I found, this is from a couple of days ago, but there's this friend of mine who's a pediatrician and very active online and happened to write this article for the Washington Post.
Okay.
And it's called Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy just made pediatricians' jobs a lot harder.
Yeah.
And I think that's, a concrete example of where the pit in the stomach stuff comes. You see Trump elected. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but in your gut, he's going to talk to people like Robert F. Kennedy in a completely different way than somebody else would, and it's not going to be a good way.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you suggesting I'm not cheering you up?
No, yes, that I'm suggesting.
Okay.
All right, yeah. The RFK thing in particular I find difficult.
Well, thank you.
That feels like a Bannon thing, too, by the way. He thinks that's hilarious. Let's do something. And then liberals won't be able to decide whether they are mad about this or not, except we're sure we can.
Right.
Yeah, that guy's wrong on that issue in particular, and it's the worst possible one for you to choose his help for, and you did it to troll us. I get it. It's not actually very difficult, Steve. It's not tough.
Right. But here's the result.
Yeah.
And this one paragraph in what he wrote, is what sticks with me. This is Daniel Summers. And he says, the implications of a vaccine-autism connection go beyond whether you accept or reject the data, or whether you can look at it from a science point of view or not. He says, if vaccines genuinely cause autism, like the opponents claim, one of two things must be true of pediatricians like me, and, by the way, like me, Greg Dworkin, but like me, the author, who administer. Either we're too incompetent to discern the relationship between the two, or we're too monstrous to care.
Which one are you?
Neither, but they both bother me if somebody thinks that about me.
Everything's binary.
Yeah. One cannot believe that autism is related to vaccination without simultaneously indicating the overwhelming majority of physicians, nurses, medical providers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know? So, it's everybody. We're all in on it. CDC experts, health policy experts, people who write, who edit the health columns in magazines, we're all in on it.
Yes.
Even your local Rotary Club is in on it. They sponsor, vaccination drives.
Oh, dang. I was about to join Rotary, too.
By saying that immunizations cause autism, Trump is training his sights on me, the author, and every other provider who delivers the same care I do.
Man, that sucks.
Right?
Yeah.
So you go from the general pit in the stomach to the specific, he is targeting me. And that's not a good feeling, and that's one of the reasons the angst. Okay. So let me just drop this Rotary Club link here for our wonderful Scott Anderson, who summarizes the show later. Hat tip to you. Don't say thank you enough.
Yes.
You do. Standing mine.
I agree, 100%. When does the Rotary Club meet around here? They've picked a nice restaurant. I forget when they meet. There's a sign outside town, but I don't want to go driving out there to look for it.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Obama's got a 60% approval. And a lot of people think that Trump is increasing the stress, and it makes it worse. So this is a funny little piece here, in a way, from The Guardian, by who is it by? I
do not know.
It's hard to know because it's by John Paul Brahmer.
Oh, okay.
J.P. Brahmer. The tweet handle is very prominent, but there you go. America. Behold your snowflake in chief.
Oh, all right. America.
Right?
Where's that one? Do you have a...
It's about to show up at the very bottom.
I was looking for Guardian. There we go, The Guardian. Okay, comment is free anyway. At least there's that.
Yeah, comment is free. It's ironic that the alt-right's insult of the moment, which is Snowflake, special Snowflake, applies to above all, their hero, President-elect Donald Trump.
Yes.
If you've ever sat through a right-wing YouTube rant or been on Twitter like you and me have, David, or spent 5 minutes on Twitter. Oh, yeah, there he is. Spent 5 minutes on Twitter. You don't even need 5 minutes.
I've done that.
You've likely heard the word snowflake. The term has supplanted the old standby of social justice warrior, or SJW,
yes,
to describe a certain kind of liberal. This is thanks in large part to the far-right blog Breitbart, which lobbed it at anyone who criticized Trump's incendiary rhetoric. But if you're unfamiliar, allow me to explain. We, special snowflakes, are delicate beings, obsessed with our own uniqueness. We identify with genders, sexual orientations. We made up off the top of our heads just to confuse people. We demand that everybody at whatever liberal arts college we're doubtless attending respect those fabricated identities, and we punish our peers with mean words like bigot and racist when they refuse to comply, and can only survive within the confines of our safe spaces. We are protected from criticism and dissenting opinion. But when we're confronted with a point of view from outside of our snow globe, of mandatory tolerance, we become, as the deplorables say, triggered. The word was originally intended to describe a reaction to a reminder of trauma, but has been recast as meaning almost any kind of upset, no matter how minor. So self-imposed victimhood, an inflated sense of self-importance, inability to handle criticism, and a totalitarian demand for respect are the criteria that define the snowflake. And then, of course, the whole article is really enter the snowflake in chief.
They're always coming up with terminology that needs to be explained.
It does, and this is a good explainer for those who have seen it but don't quite get what he's saying.
Ducks. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is particularly easy to turn around.
It is.
But okay.
But it's also revealing, in terms of like who's saying it, why are they saying it, what do they mean? And this is, in other words, how do you really understand what Donald Trump says? Well, a number of ways. Don't assume it means he knows what he's talking about.
All right.
You might assume he just talked to the last person in the room and that's what they said without him understanding what it is that it means. you know that if you hear something said that, believe me, you know he's lying. If he says, my opponent did X, Y, or Z, he's doing X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
Especially if it's bad.
Oh, you bet.
And Special Snowflake being cast as an aspersion by the Snowflake in chief makes perfect sense in that context.
Yes. By the way, Snowflake always conjured up for me the right wing's usage of it in the context of snowflake babies. The snowflake babies being frozen embryos that the pro-lifers have rescued and implanted. Somebody else's. They're just they're out there frozen, and they take them out of suspended animation and carry them to term.
Right, and once born, like 5 minutes later, you're on your own. That's part of the issue here.
Well, it's snowflake babies, and they put them in a bucket and throw them off of the roof.
But whatever, not a problem.
Get a baby.
So there's that. And by the way, I should throw in before I figure out how to sign all this off and not leave you completely depressed, but I'm not going to help you here because the breaking story this morning is CIA documents expose internal agency feud over psychologist leading interrogation program.
That's what they've turned their attention to that now?
Well, the documents are there. Whenever there's documents, whenever it's something concrete like that, then the news reports can deal with it.
That's okay.
I said this, look.
Maybe it's unverified.
In one of the more prescient warnings, an agency official wrote that if some untoward outcome is later to be explained, their sole use in this role will be indefensible. Dated June 2003, but seemed to anticipate the controversy that would engulf the agency when the details of the interrogation program were exposed. They suggest, in a sense, not letting the CIA in-house interrogationists run the show. They say, quote, they could be right on target, but if some untoward outcome is later explained, their sole use in this role will be indefensible. And then it says the files, which also include documents that shed light on the death of a CIA prisoner in Afghanistan, were made public as part of an ongoing lawsuit against the two contract psychologists, James Mitchell and J. Bruce Jessen, by ACLU. Okay? And it says here, I'm just shaking my head as I read this. Jim and Bob have both shown blatant disregard for the ethics shared by almost all of their colleagues.
Jim and Bob. Okay. Yeah, well, they have. That's rather familiar, but okay.
Isn't it? That's the point. It's rather familiar.
Yeah.
So, I'm reading this and saying, well, we've done that before and it didn't work out. And now we have this situation where ethics ain't exactly, top line on the table. These ambassador cabinet members here are getting rushed through even before they get finished with all their ethics stuff because who cares? What difference does it make?
I wonder if with Trump being at war with the intelligence community, he might find it convenient for that war, that ongoing war, and politically it would be ironic if he were to be the one to find, I'll actually let this inquiry go forward. It undermines the CIA and the CIA's credibility, and liberals will have a hard time criticizing an inquiry into the misuse of psychology in the torture program. Not that I'm going to stop any torture. In fact, I'll be increasing it. But at the same time, I'll be prosecuting the old people who did the torture before and not prosecuting the new people who do it. We just won't use any psychology. We'll just poke people with sticks the old-fashioned way.
So here's where the relevance comes in. In the article from the Washington Post, it says, just last week, the nominee to be the next director of CIA, Representative Mike Pompeo,
yes,
Republican Kansas, was asked during a Senate confirmation hearing, of which we are discussing, and thereby I'm trying to wrap up where we started and get back to the confirmation hearings at the end. And it says whether he would comply if ordered by President-elect Trump to resume the use of waterboarding and other methods on terrorism suspects. Absolutely not, he said.
Oh, Pompeo?
He said he could not imagine that I would be asked that by the president-elect. I like the first answer. The second answer is, what?
Yeah. Oh, that's some qualification. Well, but I could not imagine I would be asked that by the president-elect because the president-elect would never ask that question. However, as president, he might, in which case it's
right.
Yes.
But Trump sent exactly that signal several times during the presidential campaign, and Pompeo has previously suggested that the U.S. went too far in banning coercive interrogation methods.
All right. Well, I'm glad he's willing to say that. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's in another one. This is the congressional version of what? They're getting rid of my health care. I didn't know that. Oh, I missed that part of the campaign. This guy's a member of Congress about to become part of the CIA, intelligence community, cardinal.
Right.
Yeah, I must have missed that part. I wasn't spying hard enough on what was going on in the newspaper. What? Torture? What? He wouldn't ask me to do that. He insisted that he would. I must have been absent that day. I don't know what happened. What are you talking about? Yeah, all right, well, or else he's going to be the guy. I'm going to be the one that stands up to Trump and stops him from doing these things. After all, we've all been, crossing our fingers hoping that somebody somewhere would say no to him, and I'm going to be that guy. Okay, all right, that would be admirable.
Right. There's a piece, a little line later on in the article about one of the memos talking about these two guys, the ones with no ethical grounding. Yeah. And it says, we value their input, but they should not be in charge of anything.
Okay.
Right? And I read that.
Space
and said, this is Trump. Oh, really? I think I'll make these guys in charge.
Yeah. Value their well, okay. I mean, you can value someone's input and not put them in charge of things. Like, what's his name? The guy who's going to be National Security Advisor.
That's exactly who I was thinking.
Oh.
Bingo.
There we go.
Flynn.
Yeah.
He's got good input. He's got some interesting things. He looks at it in a different way, but he works best if he works for somebody who could, reel him in and not let him, just, okay, let's make him in charge. No, he's the worst person to have in charge.
Well, he's going to be there anyway.
And your point is what?
My point is, let's have two of them. Is there a junior? Let's put them both in.
Right, exactly. That is so funny because that's exactly what I was thinking, and that's exactly
like you
where
at
you
home. Okay. Wow. Well, Pizzagate, here we come.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, what do you think? That's my piece for today.
I think we're in trouble.
I think we are.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty more to round up just on the nominations front. I believe we are now up to 2 nominees with Zoe Baird problems, if anyone remembers who Zoe Baird is. If you're old, you do.
Does anybody remember who Zoe Baird wasn't?
Yeah.
That was over on Nanny, wasn't
it? Yeah. Pardon me.
Oh, in the brighter days where things like that were the worst thing that could happen to you.
Yeah, or when they were disqualifying, when people said, "Oh, you were just," and if you don't remember Zoe Baird, let's see, she was nominated. She was going to be the nominee for Attorney General in Bill Clinton's administration.
Mm-hmm.
And
attorney generals have to follow the law.
Yeah, you know how it is. Most of the cabinet is bound by U.S. law, but anyway, that would be, of course, one of the chief law enforcement officers. And she had, guess what, an undocumented immigrant working for her, I believe as a nanny, for who she paid basically under the table and didn't pay Social Security and other payroll taxes for her because she was undocumented. And it came out in sort of the vetting process. She kind of fessed up to it and said, this could be a problem. And that was in the days when people said, this could be a problem, and I want to tell you beforehand, just in case. And everyone agreed. She was so smart that everyone said, you're right, it is a problem. You can't be nominated as Attorney General, and she was not, or she withdrew, or whatever.
Yeah, she withdrew, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And having the Attorney General not follow the law, recognize it as a problem, and remove themselves is the exact mirror image opposite of Betsy DeVos not realizing, because Zoe Baird did realize, and Betsy DeVos did not realize, that she doesn't know anything about the Americans, the Disability Act and how it affects schools, which was highlighted during the hearing. And rather than say, oh, this is a thing that I should withdraw myself over, it turns out that she didn't know that she didn't know. And when she was given the information that she didn't know, shrug.
Yeah. Well, that's okay, because I'm going to take this whole thing apart anyway, and following the law is dumb, and people who do it are snowflake-triggered cucks or whatever. we're
Yeah,
calling them these days.
C-U-C-K. That's another term that needs explaining that we don't have to right now.
Right, but whatever they are, all of these things. But yeah, and these two aren't attorney general nominees. That'd be interesting if they pointed to it and said, well, that's the precedent if you're nominated for attorney general. If you're not, if you're only being nominated for commerce secretary and I believe also OMB director, both turned out to have undocumented workers working for them. Their solution, well, I fired that person last week. Oh, well then, I guess it's all good now, isn't it?
Yes.
So they're going forward with that one. No indication that they'll be withdrawing at any point. They don't do that.
So we have a bunch of, bad choices, which were deliberately made, I think, because they are bad choices and because it's being done in a ambassadorial, plum patronage kind of sense rather than you actually have to have a job that, requires expertise.
Right.
Of all of them, they all are awful. But they're awful in different ways. For example, Jeff Sessions isn't incompetent, just wrong about the direction, whereas, let's say, Ben Carson and Betsy DeVos is on the other end of the thing, truly undeserving of even being anywhere near these things. So of all of that, do you think any of them are not going to be confirmed? And if not, which ones?
Yeah, I don't know. I do have a feeling that they might decide to say, well, how about if we bounce one?
Yeah,
to look
that was what I was
like
thinking. One of them probably won't do it. We just don't know which one. It's like musical chairs.
Yeah, they got to decide on that. It might be something that they think inside the Trump administration. If we confirm them all, I mean that's not unusual by any means, but it's not unusual to lose one along the way by via withdrawal. And maybe it's Puzder, the one who's thinking about quitting anyway. Maybe that would be enough.
Maybe that one. You're right. That might be enough. The other one that would come up on my list is Ben Carson.
Yeah.
Because he knows it's a terrible fit, but much more important.
Yes, right.
There's 5 billion reasons why it's not Betsy DeVos.
Yeah, that's true too. I don't know who it's going to be, or
which is what she's worth. That's why I said that. Not for David, but for our listening audience.
The other, I guess, the other possibility is, and this is, I guess, it would be more Trump-like to say, I want to win I'm for winning. I want to win every single time. He would accept somebody, perhaps withdrawing in advance of a vote, maybe, if they thought he could make a quick switch and then win with the next one and then forget about that person.
Right.
But, the prospect of losing it in a vote, he's not having any of that.
Yeah, he doesn't like to lose, and he doesn't want to lose early. And so, you have all of those things going on at the same time. So, fascinating to watch and try to figure out the dynamics. And with that, I think I will sign off.
All righty.
And say thank you so much to my friend, David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning. We've been trying a couple of different things on the show. I have been trying, to be honest, a couple of things on the show. Been trying to look at a narrative arc and big picture, little picture, not forget the details. And, it's a little bit of a different approach this week, but I feel like it's good to just try to suck it all in, and then we get reset on Friday. Mm-hmm. That's the inaugural. Then all of a sudden he's president. Then it's really detailed.
Well, Monday he's president.
Yeah, well,
we're going to do the whole. It's paperwork tomorrow.
It's paperwork,
and then
right.
Monday I'll be in, like 10:15. If that's okay with everybody, I'll bring Starbucks. I'm sorry I'm late, but that's how it is, and we'll just go from. It's 9:00 Central Time, so I'm president of Central Time Zone too. I'm early for work in the Pacific Time Zone.
True.
So,
okay. Well,
right.
There's the doorbell. So off I go.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks very much. You do the same. We'll see you next week when it's all over. Post-apocalyptic visit with you next week on day 1T, the Trump version of day 1. All right, let's go. We got a lot to take care of. Thanks very much for starting us out, Greg. Let me run through everything I can as quickly as I can, and then forget my pledge to do it quickly and turn around and linger over some other things. Okay, so I mentioned the Rick Perry thing, and so I think we know what we need to know about that one. I have a nice New York Times piece that I could read about it. The title is fun. Learning curve, it says, in quotes. As Rick Perry pursues a job he initially misunderstood. But I think we got the gist of that one already. Let's see. What I did think was interesting about the Perry thing. All right, let me see. I got to flip back. I put so many things in pocket, and then occasionally multiple pieces about the same thing, and sometimes the tweets that went along with them. All right, so let's see. We got that. I mentioned that there were two others with Zoe Baird problems. Let's get those on record. I did mention it was, I believe, Commerce Secretary. That would be Wilbur Ross, the owner of the Sago mine, who kills his miners. Talking Points memo happens to be what I grabbed on that one. But yes, Trump Commerce Secretary pick fired undocumented employee before hearing. That's Matt Schuem, writing at TPM. President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for Commerce Secretary said he fired an undocumented household employee prior to his confirmation hearing Wednesday. So it's all good, I guess. Wilbur Ross told the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee on Wednesday that as a part of his confirmation process, he had asked everyone he employed to produce paperwork verifying their immigration status. Now he's checking in order to verify the legality of the employment. Now, Commerce Secretary might be somebody who's interested in being in compliance with the law, certainly, but also I don't know who's got what kind of roles in trying to, let's say, encourage employers. For somebody who's serving a president so into immigration issues, what about the fact that employers basically take whoever they can get and love to pick up undocumented workers for their payroll because they can cheat them, and when they find out they're being cheated and protest, you simply threaten them with deportation, and they knuckle under. So I don't really know what this guy was doing for this person, but anyway, we'll move on with the article. You all get the idea. And that's his thing. It's interesting. So as in preparation for his confirmation hearing, he performs his first review of everyone's paperwork to see if they're legally, all square in working for him. I guess if he hadn't been nominated, nothing would have come up. He would have kept doing it. Clearly, before you hire someone is no time to be asking whether or not they're eligible to be hired. You're in a rush to get something done. Stupid regulations get in the way of everything. All right. He continued by saying that this one employee was unable to, and therefore was terminated, unable to produce documents to verify the legality of their employment. So all this time, he's been doing what? How do you pay this person? Never mind all of that. The confirmation processes of two of President Bill Clinton's nominees for Attorney General, that's right, I forgot it happened twice in a row, Zoe Baird and Kimba Wood, were derailed one after the other in 1993, following revelations that they had hired undocumented immigrants as nannies in what became known as Nannygate. I guess this is Wilburgate, or I don't know what you would call it. I wonder what he was doing. I don't know what capacity this person was working for them. All right, what do you also have? The OMB director had a similar problem. This one back to the New York Times for this one. Trump budget nominee did not pay taxes for employee. Let's open it up and just take a quick look. Jennifer Steinhauer has the byline on this one, and we're talking about current representative. He didn't resign yet, did he? Mick Mulvaney, Republican of South Carolina, is President-elect Donald J. Trump. I don't know who that is. Donald P. Trump is the guy I'm familiar with. His pick for White House budget director. President-elect Trump's choice for budget director failed to pay more than $15,000 in payroll taxes for a household employee, he admitted in a statement to the Senate Budget Committee, the sort of tax compliance issue that has derailed cabinet nominees in the past. In a questionnaire provided to the committee, Representative Mick Mulvaney, a conservative from South Carolina and vocal proponent of fiscal restraint, noted, quote, I have come to learn during the confirmation review process that I failed to pay FICA and federal and state unemployment taxes on a household employee for the years 2000 through 2004. At least he didn't have to terminate him that day, right? Mr. Mulvaney said he had subsequently paid more than $15,000 in taxes and awaits the state tax bill. At least he's tried to make amends for it, although it might have been something that he did in advance of this hearing. It's probably true. So he awaits the state tax bill as well as penalties and interests. His confirmation hearing before the committee is scheduled for January 24th. The employee was a babysitter hired when Mr. Mulvaney and his wife had triplets in 2000. Attempts to reach Mr. Mulvaney's office for comment were not successful. Spokesman for the Senate Budget Committee, said he'd have no immediate comment. Mulvaney will almost certainly be asked about the issue at his hearing. Duh. A situation similar to that of former Senator Tom Daschle, who in 2009 was forced to withdraw his nomination as President Obama's choice to lead HHS. Remember that? I barely do. During Daschle's confirmation process, it was revealed that he had paid roughly $140,000 in back taxes related to a car and driver provided to him by a former employer and to some consulting income. Senator John Cornyn of Texas, now second-ranking Republican in the Senate, said at that time that he would not support Daschle's nomination, calling his tax issue a little too much to swallow. So we'll see. Keep an eye on John Cornyn of Texas with respect to Mr. Mulvaney's nomination. I bet he's come to grips with that problem now and can manage to find it in his heart to forgive. Daschle's withdrawal, by the way, came 2 weeks after Tim Geithner, Mr. Obama's first Treasury Secretary, was nearly knocked out with his announcement that he failed to pay $25,000 in payroll taxes while working at the International Monetary Fund. So there's some precedent for letting people sneak by, isn't there? In a statement, John Swartacki, spokesman for the Trump transition team, never heard of that guy yet, but okay, he said nobody's more qualified and more prepared to rein in Washington spending and fight for taxpayers than Mick Mulvaney. That seems like an odd conclusion to that sentence. Nobody is more qualified to rein in Washington spending than some dude. Congressman Mulvaney raised the issue surrounding the care of his premature triplets immediately upon being tapped for the position and has taken the appropriate follow-up measures. The administration fully stands behind Representative Mulvaney, which is the polite way of saying, yeah, he did squat about it until there was a more important job in the offing, and then he said, wee, all right, I better go take care of that problem. He was fully prepared to continue serving in the House without ever fessing up to that one, which is actually a giant ethics problem, and they should file a complaint against him. But who cares, because he's probably on his way out of Congress now anyway, headed to take care of the White House budget instead. The lying son of a bitch. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, Democratic leader, said in a statement, Tom Daschle did the same thing, and Republicans insisted it disqualified him from becoming HHS Secretary. We say to our colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And it's never really true. But okay, if Tom Daschle couldn't become a cabinet member for not paying taxes for household employees, same standard ought to apply to Mick Mulvaney. But what about Geithner? I don't know. Well, I don't remember what Geithner's problem was. All it says now is he failed to pay $25,000 in payroll taxes, but it doesn't necessarily say, I don't know. I mean, I assume that that's from the same problem. That's why it's in the article. We should clear that one up. But it didn't disqualify him, so that's how this one will go. Well, you said that Daschle was disqualified. Well, you said that Geithner wasn't. Well, okay then. There you have it. Both sides. Two potential, okay, they go into the discussion of Zoe Baird and Kimba Wood. I guess for women it's pretty disqualifying. For men it's about 50-50 is basically what it looks like it comes out. All right. Let's see. Okay, so that's the news on individual cabinet members. Of course, there was the news of Betsy DeVos and her implosion in her hearing, the idiocy of Rick Perry. I think that pretty much wrapped up the top line headlines of dumb cabinet appointments from yesterday. Let's see. I also see here, I better stick this in pocket for later. A lot of people pointing to this piece in The Hill. Trump team prepares dramatic cuts. Donald Trump is ready to take an axe to government spending. I don't think he can lift an axe, but okay. Staffers for the Trump transition team have been meeting with career staff at the White House ahead of Friday's presidential inauguration to outline their plans for shrinking the federal bureaucracy. The Hill has learned the changes they propose are dramatic, and everybody has been pointing to one in particular. It's actually the second one on the list here that has been disturbing everybody for some reason. The Departments of Commerce and Energy, oh no, would see major reductions in funding, with programs under their jurisdiction either being eliminated or transferred to other agencies. The Departments of Transportation, Justice, and State would see significant cuts and program eliminations. Let's see what Rick Perry and Wilbur Ross have to say about that. Making my job easier? Fine. The one that seems to be disturbing everybody in my timeline, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting would be privatized, while the National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for the Humanities would be eliminated entirely. Frequent targets for Republican conservatives. Not terribly surprising, but still annoying nonetheless. Now, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting I would guess would be basically eliminated. I mean, what's the point of having a privatized public broadcast? How do you do that? Basically, now, what would they be doing? What would be the plan for privatizing? How would they do it? I have no idea. They have no idea. My guess is that it would be Soviet Union to Russia transition style privatization, which is to say looting style privatization. They'll just declare the entity as it currently operates to be available for private purchase, and anybody who can come up with whatever figure they decide to place on the value of the assets that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting brings with it can have it. It's not quite as lucrative, I don't think, a measure or an opportunity as, say, buying the entirety of the previously nationalized Soviet natural gas production system for a couple of bucks. And I assume you get a better price. But my guess is that I would imagine that it's the Putin model they'll be working on, given who the president is going to be. Let's see, other cuts, any specifics? Probably not, just a bunch of vagaries. But let's see, overall, the blueprint being used by Trump's team would reduce federal spending by $10.5 trillion over 10 years. That's a considerable amount of money. It's about, I think they're still talking about cutting like a third of the entire budget out every year for 10 years. So that's the sort of thing that you deliver as a president's budget early in the year. In February, and it's always tough to deliver your first one because you're not really in office until it's almost too late. But you have to deliver some kind of a budget document. Doesn't matter what you deliver. You send to Congress. Even the members of your own party say it's dead on arrival. That's the favorite reaction, the favorite quote to give of any president's budget, no matter what party. And then Congress reworks the whole thing from the ground up. And depending on where they come down with their figures in relation to the president's figures, they jockey for a position thereby saying we're saving certain programs if they think those programs are popular, or we're going even deeper than the president. It's a very big political game. The president's budget means next to nothing, which, of course, means that Mick Mulvaney's job means next to nothing. So who cares if he pays his taxes? The proposed cuts, let's see, hew closely to a blueprint published last year by the Conservative Heritage Foundation. What do you know? A think tank that has helped staff the Trump transition. Yeah, pretty much anything that even remotely looks like a concrete policy proposal that comes out of the early Trump administration is likely to have been developed by the Heritage Foundation or some other think tank, and they just swapped the cover page and put the Trump name on it. He's got nothing. Similar proposals have in the past won support from Republicans in the House and Senate, who believe they have an opportunity to truly tackle spending after years of warnings about the rising debt, which will how that's going to become important again in the wake of the giant wall, I have no idea. But gimmitarianism is the answer to that one. The deficit matters when we need it to matter, and it doesn't matter when we don't. Many of the specific cuts were included in the 2017 budget adopted by the Conservative Republican Study Committee, a caucus that represents a majority of House Republicans. The RSC budget plan would reduce federal spending by $8.6 trillion over the next decade. Two members of Trump's transition team are discussing the cuts at the White House Budget Office. Russ Vought, V-O-U-G-H-T, a former aide to Vice President-elect Mike Pence, and the former executive director of the RSC, and John Gray, who also previously worked for Pence, as well as Senator Rand Paul and Speaker Paul Ryan, when Ryan headed the House Budget Committee. Vogt and Gray, who both worked for the Heritage Foundation now, are laying the groundwork for the so-called skinny budget. Skinny. Everybody likes skinny, right? 175 to 200-page document that will spell out the main priorities of the incoming Trump administration. Do you want to know what the priorities of the Trump administration are, Mr. Trump? We at the Heritage Foundation will tell you what they are. And they come with summary tables, too. How extraordinary. That document is expected to come out within 45 days of Trump taking office, give or take, maybe if we want to wait for a Monday. The administration's full budget, including appropriations language, supplementary materials, and long-term analysis, is expected to be released toward the end of Trump's first 100 days in office, or by mid to late April. Representative Mick Mulvaney, remember him? Trump's choice to head the Office of Management and Budget has not yet weighed in on the proposed spending reforms because he's still waiting confirmation by the Senate, and might not get it, I guess. Mulvaney voted for the RSC budget offered as a more conservative alternative to the main House Republican budget in 2015. The House did not vote on a budget, on the RSC budget, for fiscal year 2017, or any budget, I don't think, for that matter. The preliminary proposals from the White House Budget Office will be shared with the federal departments and agencies soon after Trump takes the oath of office tomorrow and could provoke an angry backlash. Trump's cabinet picks have yet to be apprised of the reforms, but who cares, which would reduce resources within their agencies, but who cares. The budget offices of the various departments will have the chance to review the proposals, offer feedback, and appeal for changes before the president's budget goes to Congress. It's not clear whether Trump's first budget will include reforms to Social Security or Medicare, two major drivers of the federal deficit. Trump vowed during the campaign not to cut Medicare and Social Security, a pledge that Representative Tom Price, his pick to head HHS, told lawmakers in testimony Wednesday had not changed. Yet it could be very difficult to reduce the U.S. debt without tackling the entitlement programs. Conservative House budgets have repeatedly included reforms to Medicare and Social Security, arguing they are necessary to save the programs. I'll remind you, can't be done, under the rules anyway, by reconciliation, Social Security. Just thought I'd mention it again. The presidential budget is important in setting policy and laying out the administration's agenda, though Congress would be responsible for approving the federal budget, the actual one, and appropriating funds. Moving Trump's budget through Congress could be difficult. No one actually wants to do it. Doesn't matter. In 2015, with the GOP in control of the House, the RSC budget failed by a vote of 132 to 94, as it traditionally does. Moderate Republicans and Democrats on the Appropriations Committee are likely to push back at some of the cuts being considered by Trump, but they seem likely to have the support of Mulvaney, a conservative budget hawk who backed the RSC budget. Maybe, we'll see. He'll probably change his mind once he gets into the White House, as often happens. We'll skip down a little bit here and say the Heritage Blueprint used as a basis for Trump's proposed cuts calls for eliminating several programs that conservatives label corporate welfare programs. Okay, let's see. The Minority Business Development Agency. Minority, eh? The Economic Development Administration, because we're all against economic development. The International Trade Administration, because trade sucks, and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. The total savings from cutting these four programs would amount to nearly $900 million in 2017. We'll see about that. At the Department of Justice, the blueprint calls for eliminating the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, because they hate cops. Literally, by the way, that's the acronym of the it's not just that they actually hate police officers, but Community-Oriented Policing Services. COPS, one of the dumb acronyms out there. Violence Against Women Grants, get rid of that. And the Legal Services Corporation, so that poor people have legal representation. Also, it calls for reducing funding for its Civil Rights and Environment and Natural Resources divisions, because those suck too. At the Department of Energy, it would roll back funding for nuclear physics, and which the new secretary doesn't understand anyway, and advanced scientific computing research to 2008 levels. The Department of Energy, by the way, is a mishmash and kind of a waste, as it is. I agree it needs some reform. They will also eliminate the Office of Electricity, because who needs that? I mean, what is it even? Eliminate the Office of Energy Efficiency, and renewable energy. The two things that probably people think the Energy Department does do. It also will scrap the Office of Fossil Energy, even though they love fossil energy, which focuses on technologies to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. You see, that's why they don't like that. We love fossil energy. Oh, this is an office about making it cleaner? To hell with that. Under the State Department's jurisdiction, funding for the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are candidates for elimination. Conservatives allied with fiscal hawks such as Pence, Paul, and the Heritage Foundation say the time is long past due to get serious about cutting the federal deficit. What do you know? And then blah, 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 something from Brian Darling, a former aide to Paul, and now also a former, I guess, staffer at the Heritage Foundation. He says something, something, something. I hate the National Endowment for the Arts. That's his conservative bona fides for the day. And we're done. So just in case you were wondering what they were proposing cutting, now is that time of the year when we start to get those threats. I assume, by the way, somewhere along the line, the annual ritual of threatening the low-income home energy program, LIHEAP program, that helps people heat their houses in the winter. We'll be on the chopping block, and then it'll get saved. That's we go through that charade every year. We'll see. Maybe it won't get saved this year. Who knows? All right. I think we're up to date on the cabinet stuff, and wow, there's still a million different things to get to. What do we think is super important? What do we want to get jammed in here? Let's see. First of all, let's try this one. I thought this was an interesting one. Over to healthcare news. AP has this story. This makes for a good political story. GOP governors who turned down Medicaid money under the Affordable Care Act, right, have their hands out now. I guess now the incoming Trump administration makes it possible for them to countenance taking federal assistance for getting more people either insured or at least covered by Medicaid in their states, whereas before it was treason to take that money because the president was black, right? That's essentially what's going on here. It's Dateline Des Moines, Iowa, and our reporter here, by the way, let's see, what, no byline on this? Or do they put them somewhere funny? There it is, Thomas Beaumont. Thank you very much, Mr. Beaumont. Dateline Des Moines, Iowa. Republican governors who turned down billions in federal dollars from an expansion of Medicaid under President Barack Obama's health care law now have their hands out in hopes of the GOP Congress, that the GOP Congress comes up with a new formula to provide insurance for low-income Americans. In other words, basically, Obamacare, no thanks. Somebody else care? Trump care? Yeah, I'll take it. The other GOP governors who agreed to expand state-run services in exchange for federal help, more than a dozen out of 31 states, are adamant that Congress maintain the financing that has allowed them to add millions of low-income people to the health insurance rolls. Those two groups of Republicans embody the difficulty the emboldened GOP congressional majorities face. Emboldened majorities, yes, but by the way, cut in numbers. We should probably point that out at some point. What do they face? The trouble of making good on their promises to repeal the 2010 healthcare law while preserving popular provisions. Republican governors and lieutenant governors plan to plead their cases with GOP leaders and the Senate Finance Committee on Thursday as the Republican majority has taken the first step to dismantling the law. 19 Republican governors were successful in defying the Affordable Care Act's mandate that states open up Medicaid, the state federal health insurance for low-income Americans, to more people. It was a major expansion of the health insurance system whose primary purpose has been broadened over its 52-year life from a backstop medical assistance supplement for poor families receiving cash welfare and people with disabilities to the go-to program to address widening gaps in the private health insurance system. In the 3 years since the Affordable Care Act went into effect, Medicaid enrollment has grown by about 18 million people to roughly 75 million, according to the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, notably, turned down more than $500 million for his state, because he's a genius. Determined to win over conservative voters for his presidential bid, he doubted the federal government would keep its word to cover 100% of expansion costs in the first 3 years and 90% over the long term. He was wrong about that, and now he's not president. On average, the federal government's contribution accounts for 56% of a state's Medicaid budget, making the financing terms under the health care law much more generous. Wisconsin's federal split is about 60-40. Instead of taking the extra money, Walker used the existing formula to shore up coverage for Wisconsin's poorest and release less poor Medicaid recipients into the private insurance market and public program in the Obama law. So the simple message is this: vote to repeal and replace Obamacare immediately and send Medicaid funding to the states in the form of a block grant, Walker wrote last week in a letter to House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California. So that's his plan. Repeal Obamacare, but send us a giant block grant of money, and we'll do something with it, and then that'll work. Republicans have long sought block grants or lump sum payments for health care. The money has helped them maintain their budgets, while the relative lack of heavy regulation has allowed governors freedom to experiment with social services policy or close budget deficits with it and not give anybody health care. But with Republicans backed by President-elect Donald Trump pursuing repeal of the law, Walker and other Republican governors are asking specifically for the Medicaid money and fewer rules, even fewer, for spending it. What they're really saying is, let's look at this again through the lens of greater freedom and flexibility from those constraints, and we'll take a fresh look at expansion, says Dennis Smith, who was Medicaid director for President George W. Bush. Hardly, said Ron Pollock of Families USA, a leading advocate for Obama's law. Now that Barack Obama is no longer going to be at the White House, it's going to be much more palatable for Republican governors to seek additional funding, he said. All Democratic governors in office when the law took effect in 2013 agreed to the expansion. Even Republican governors in 11 states agreed to expand Medicaid, some with specific waivers that still allowed them to claim the federal reimbursement. Now, Republican leaders in states aren't just asking for the money they turned down, they're asking to change the formula to get back what they lost. How do you like that? The federal Medicaid formula is based in part on how many enrollees a state had as of 2016. But last year, Ohio, for instance, had added 700,000 recipients since accepting the Medicaid expansion. For Michigan, it was roughly 630,000. But Medicaid in Kansas grew at a far slower rate, given Governor Sam Brownback's opposition to the federal law. Now he wants Congress, this is the kick in the pants here for you, now he wants Congress to change the formula to benefit his state. As it stands now, because you didn't do it, you're going to miss out on a bigger block grant, said Kansas Lieutenant Governor Jeff Coyler. Changing the rules to help states that held out will be a concern for Republican governors in places like Indiana. How did that happen? Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio, where everybody hates Obama and loves Trump because something Rust Belt. That's according to former White House Medicaid Director Smith. What happens to states that expanded Medicaid? Did they go back to pre-expansion dollars? He asked. Iowa Governor Terry Branstad doesn't think so. He's confident his state's program, modeled on the Indiana plan adopted by now Vice President-elect Mike Pence, will be upheld. However, Ohio Governor John Kasich isn't just crossing his fingers. He's going to Washington to defend Ohio's program. They love him there in Trumpville. Do I think that Obamacare can be dramatically improved? I do. Kasich told reporters this month. Do I want to see a repeal of the expansion of Medicaid? I don't. There you go. That sums it up. Thanks very much, John. That was super helpful. So how do you like that? Not only do the governors who turned down the money before have their hand out, they want back pay, essentially. That money I refused, now I would like it. Thanks, because it comes from a white guy. That is fairly amazing. Just thought I had to bring you up to date on that one. It's not like the hottest news, but I really think that's the sort of thing that you really, I love to pay attention to in something like this. Okay. Something like this being the radio show I'm currently doing. All right. Where else do we need to go? There's an awful lot. And there were some terrific diaries over at Daily Kos that I think highlighted some great stories too. Let's see. But before I jump off of that one, I wanted to pick up on this one. Daniel Dale on Twitter, who I think has been doing a fantastic job in the last several months from his perch as Washington correspondent for the Toronto Star. Go Canada. Oh, Canada. Go Canada. I don't know why that just popped into my head, but congratulations to you Canadians, I guess, for this one. Okay, Daniel tweeted this one, I don't know when. Last night? No, yesterday morning. And I missed it until last night. A good comment. I thought, oh man, he says, Republicans on Capitol Hill think Trump entirely made up the, quote, healthcare plan that he described to the Washington Post. Of course, that was discussed a little bit in the early part of the week. Over the weekend, Trump giving a couple of interviews in which he insisted, no, we really are much further along on developing the healthcare plan. I got a whole plan ready to go for this whole repeal and replace thing. Now, this is coming out of, by the way, the National Review, and you know who they are and what they're all about. I don't think we're going to read their entire thing. We'll just take a look at the excerpt that Daniel Dale, that is, included with his tweet, which reads, after Trump's Washington Post interview this past Sunday, the conservative healthcare universe, including some people on Trump's own team, quickly concluded that the separate administration plan he described was entirely a figment of Trump's imagination. Yowza. Let's just jump right in and inaugurate that guy, shall we? This place is going to hell in a handbasket. I don't know what else to tell you. All right. Let's see. What else have we put aside here? Here's another tweet I have put aside. Oh, yes. Okay. That's part of, oh, my. That's going to take us some time. That's a larger issue. The still looming Russia story, which is growing rapidly out of control. Let's see. I also wanted to note this one. This one, a lot of people pointed to the other day. Who did this happen to first? I think I put this in pocket somewhere first, but one of the cadre of D.C. reporters ran into a problem yesterday, and I thought I had put it aside all by itself, but in case I didn't, well, let's just go over to Politico's reporting on the issue, or rather, I should say, I'll talk about the tweet that caught my eye about it. I had already seen the story. Garance Frank Ruta with this one, who she's still clinging to that fake name. I don't really know why that happens. But she noted this as the first possibly illegal act against journalists of the Trump era, if you count today as part of the Trump era. This from the Politico story. Why don't we just jump right down to the excerpt that she picks out? That'll save us some time. We can move on to a new subject. President-elect Donald Trump and his 3 adult children, and he's got more than 3 adult children, but only 3 of them are involved in the ownership of the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C., the one in the old post office, right? They have, as you know, a controversial 60-year lease with the federal government, General Services Administration, which owns the property. The lease that the GSA signed with Trump says on page 30 that the public is allowed to access historic sections of the building subject to such reasonable rules and time restrictions as tenant, that would be Trump, may formulate from time to time and is approved in writing by landlord until there is a risk to public safety. Now, what the hell are we talking about here? I guess we're going to need some background on this one. We'll pull up the Politico article that the excerpt came from. Some reporters, at least one, who I saw at the end, I guess this is it. Okay, this is the one I saw. Daniel Lipman, who writes for Politico, had this first-person report. The Trump International Hotel in Washington is banning the media from its premises during Inauguration Week. Media is not allowed in this week in respect of the privacy of our guests. Patricia Tang, the hotel's director of sales and marketing, wrote in an email. By the way, let me get this story out here. A Politico reporter attempted to enter the hotel Wednesday morning for a previously scheduled breakfast meeting. A breakfast meeting. You just want to go eat breakfast there, but was stopped at the door. He then identified himself as a journalist and was told media was not allowed. So I guess they're stopping everybody who goes in now for security purposes. Are you a guest? You can't even meet guests for food there anymore. President-elect Donald Trump and his 3 adult children, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Basically, it comes down to this then. They decided that they're going to close the place off for media because, I don't know what, privacy of their guests. They don't want, I'm sure there would be an interesting story in it. He's just going to get some breakfast, this reporter. Although, pardon me, it doesn't name the reporter. I thought I saw Lipman tweeting before the story was out that maybe that it was him trying to go to breakfast. You'd think you could just write that in the story, but maybe it was somebody else. That's why it didn't make an appearance. I don't know. It doesn't really matter who it was. The interesting thing is, one, that they think they need to protect the privacy of the people staying at the Trump hotel, although I can see there's probably a good reason for it. I think it would make a good story to go and say, so, who's staying in the Trump hotel during the inauguration week? Because, one, they're awfully inflated prices. And two, of course, the whole emoluments thing. Who's paying Trump personally during the inauguration week to stay in his stupid hotel? Well, they're not going to let reporters just walk in there and find out. They're going to have to do some other kind of sleuthing. I think that's sort of an important reminder that this does connect to the whole Trump bribery emoluments thing. They're going to use everything they can to make it difficult for reporters to find out who's paying the Trump organization in the form of the emoluments of paying the ridiculously inflated prices for a terrible hotel room in Washington, D.C. So back to the excerpt that Grant's picked out, right? One of the issues is that the hotel wasn't just new construction. It's built in the old post office building, which is a government property. And as one might expect, for a government property that has historical landmark value, for them to lease it out for use as a hotel and redevelopment as a hotel to Trump or anyone else, they're going to retain rights for the public to visit this national landmark. I don't know really how many people say, God, when I go to D.C., what I want to do, forget all the White House and Washington Monument stuff. I want to go up in the old post office tower and look around the city. That's what people did. I mean, that's what was available there. It's not a huge tourist attraction, but the point is there's a public property surrounding this thing, and the Trumps, who, as you know, don't make any differentiation between things they own and things they have custody of, they simply say, well, in order to get to the part of the building that's a National Historic Landmark, you have to come through our door, so screw you. And there's going to be, if there wasn't already a conflict issue about the ownership of the hotel, now we're going to have fights about this, and it's all going to be even further complicated by the fact that you're going to be fighting with the President of the United States over these things. So, to continue with the excerpt, the hotel's decision to ban media from property owned by the federal government and from a hotel controlled by the President-elect comes amid a broader debate over media access to the incoming administration. Trump has resisted forming a protective pool around him instead opting for a semi-protective pool. I don't even know exactly what to tell you about that afford the media less access than previous presidents allowed. I'm not sure whether the terminology of protective pools operative anymore or ever was, but okay. Further, the D.C. legal code prohibits public places like hotels from denying the full and equal enjoyment of its facilities to people based on source of income, among other reasons, calling it an unlawful discriminatory practice. Source of income could reasonably include one's occupation as a journalist, or I suppose as a prostitute, which might have been the original intent of that. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I don't know where that comes from. But, yeah, that's going to create problems. But, of course, it won't be sorted out because the bulk of Trump's public supporters say, yeah, journalists are scum and they're horrible, and you spent the entire campaign demonizing them, and with good reason. I don't really care that they can't get access to this stupid hotel. All right. What else have we to share with you in pocket? Plenty, as I keep promising. Let's move on to our next subject. All right. Where should we go with this one? All right. How about this? A fake news thing. Where were we? Let's see, where do we begin with this one? Okay. The New York Times had a piece which has been widely circulated. Another story of another reporter who caught up with a fake news operation somewhere. They found out who was it behind this particular fake news operation and interviewed them. This is probably the third or fourth such article I've seen. I think we've shared at least one or two. There were the Macedonian kids who were making fake news entirely for profit. There were some American dudes who, play Xbox every day and make up fake news and do it exclusively for the ad revenue. And then there's this guy, a third guy, who has an interesting story, and then there's an interesting follow-up to it. From headline to photograph, a fake news masterpiece. This written by Scott Shane. He's the real reporter, writing at the New York Times about the fake news reporter Cameron Harris. The piece is illustrated with Mr. Harris sitting at home. It says Cameron Harris in his home office in Annapolis, Maryland on Monday. He created a fake story about an electrical worker who stumbled upon stacked boxes of ballots pre-marked for Hillary Clinton. Now, I just note for the record, he is sitting here in a suit and tie at his home office doing this work, and I was curious about why he wears a suit and tie in his own home office. My original surmise was he knew that the New York Times was coming and going to take pictures of him, and he wanted to look appropriately Republican and professional and aspirational and whatnot, and Donald Trump wears suits, so I will too, even though my job is sitting here making up fake news in my own kitchen. I checked into it. It is his own kitchen. He's only 22, 23 years old, something like that. It's not his mom's kitchen. He actually rents a place in Annapolis, Maryland, all by his lonesome, I guess I should say. I don't know if he has roommates or anything, but he does it all by himself because, of course, he makes plenty of money with his fake news. So as I said, Annapolis, Maryland is the dateline here. It was early fall, and Donald J. Trump, behind in the polls, seemed to be preparing a rationale in case a winner like him somehow managed to lose. I'm afraid the election is going to be rigged. You're familiar with all this. I have to be honest. The Republican nominee told a riled-up crowd in Columbus, Ohio. He was hearing more and more about evidence of rigging, he added, leaving the details to his supporters' imagination. A few weeks later, Cameron Harris, a new college graduate with a fervent interest in Maryland Republican politics. Maryland Republican politics. There's not a lot of Republican politics going on in Maryland. It's a pretty blue state, but every once in a while they win the governorship. That's true. Anyway, he had a fervent interest in Maryland Republican politics and a need for cash. What do you know? That does seem to go together, doesn't it? Well, he sat down at the kitchen table of his apartment to fill in the details that Mr. Trump had left out. In a dubious art just coming into its prime, this bogus story would be his masterpiece. Mr. Harris started by crafting the headline. Breaking. That's a good start for these things. Breaking. Tens of thousands of fraudulent Clinton votes found in Ohio warehouse. It made sense, he figured, to locate this shocking discovery in the very city and state where Mr. Trump had highlighted his rigged meme. I had a theory when I sat down to write it, recalled Mr. Harris, a 23-year-old former college quarterback and fraternity leader. That's great. Given the severe distrust of the media among Trump supporters, anything that parroted Trump's talking points, people would click. Trump was saying rigged election, rigged election. People were predisposed to believe Hillary Clinton could not win except by cheating. That's a super-duper insight there. Cameron, way to go. In a raucous, check out the big brain on Cameron. Just want to throw that one in there. In a raucous election year defined by made-up stories, Mr. Harris was a homegrown, self-taught practitioner, a boutique operator with no ties to Russian spy agencies, that we know of, or Macedonian fabrication factories. As Mr. Trump takes office this week, the beneficiary of at least a modest electoral boost, at least, from a flood of fakery, Mr. Harris and his ersatz news website, ChristianTimesNewspaper.com, make for an illuminating tale, as does his acquisition of the site, by the way, and it's outlined herein. Contacted by a reporter who had discovered an electronic clue that revealed his secret authorship of ChristianTimesNewspaper.com, he was wary at first, chagrined to be unmasked. This topic is rather sensitive, Mr. Harris said, noting that he was trying to build a political consulting business and needed to protect his reputation. He has, of course, no reputation. And build a political consulting business? Didn't we just find out you were 23 and a recent college graduate, former college quarterback, and fraternity leader? But build a political consulting business based on what? Well, I am wearing a suit. It begins to make more sense. But eventually, he agreed to tell the story of his foray into fake news, a very part-time gig that he calculated paid him about $1,000 an hour in web advertising revenue. Well, golly gee whiz, I could make a part-time gig out of that too, $1,000 an hour. Well, I only do it part-time. How much is it worth? More than most people earn full-time. Oh, well, what do you know? He seemed to regard his experience with a combination of guilt about having spread falsehoods and pride at doing it so skillfully. Time out, just by the way, to call back to a story we discussed yesterday. Wasn't it that when we were talking about Andy Puzder that we referenced, wasn't it his statement? How do you pay someone $15 an hour to scoop ice cream? How do you pay someone $1,000 to lie? I mean, it seems to me that as between the two, if the choices are binary, who would I rather pay $1,000 an hour to? The person who goes to the store, leaves their house and goes and scoops ice cream and at least sells product that's real to other people who actually want it. And to me, it would be outrageous to pay people $15 an hour to make up fake news stories. That has no value. We don't want that to happen. Making up fake news stories. So, and what an easy job. The other guys just do Xbox and smoke bongs and, make up their stories. This guy, though, he gets dressed up, I don't know, maybe we should pay him some more. He's got rent to make. But, if the choices are binary, I'd say $15 an hour for the people who make fake news and $1,000 an hour for people who scoop ice cream. I think it's too much for scooping ice cream, but I know it's too much for lying. That I can tell you. So, where were we? The topic is a sensitive one, right? And anyway, he made $1,000 an hour. He seemed to regard his experience with a combination of guilt about having spread falsehoods, good, and pride at doing so skillfully, bad. All right. Embedded in this is a screen cap, I guess, of the Christian Times newspaper and their story, and it's it has a shot of a person standing near a bunch of boxes in what appears to be a storage facility of some kind, although actually it looks like it's inside of a truck, a panel truck, to be honest. And the boxes say ballot box on them, so the story must be true, right? At his kitchen table that night in September, Mr. Harris wondered who might have found these fraudulent Clinton ballots. I wonder how much time he spent pondering that, though. I'm wondering about that. He wondered who might have found them. Who might have found these fraudulent Clinton ballots? Well, Cameron, there weren't any fraudulent Clinton ballots. Why are you pondering this? I don't know. Should it be a person who's left-handed? Should it be a person who wears, let's say, I don't know, a members-only jacket? Don't sweat the details, dude. There weren't any ballots. But I don't know how long he spent on it. So anyway, it says he invented Randall Prince, a Columbus area electrical worker. This everyman, a Trump supporter, whose name hinted at a sort of nobility, Prince, right, had entered a little-used back room at the warehouse and stumbled upon stacked boxes of ballots pre-marked for Mrs. Clinton. Mr. Harris decided. And that's a great word for it. I just decided that happened, and that's how it went. Who found him? Randall Prince. Who's that? I don't know. I made him up. What does he do for a living? He's an electrical worker. An electrical worker. Why? Because that's so, unlikely and everymanish. Do you know any electrical workers? Here's a question. Cameron Harris. Do you know anybody who personally drives a pickup truck? Should we check on that? Probably in Annapolis you do, right? I mean, after all, it's not New York City where they make fake picante sauces. Anyway, so that's what he decides. The guy's going to be an electrical worker. He entered a little used part of a warehouse because warehouses have electricity, I'm pretty sure. And there you go. No one really goes in this building. It's mainly used for short-term storage by a commercial plumber, Prince said. How about that, too? I'm going to throw in that it's actually a building that's used by a commercial plumber. A storage facility, the back room of a warehouse for short-term storage by a commercial plumber. Why? I don't know. What is he storing there? I don't know. The things that actual plumbers just buy as needed from Home Depot or other plumbing suppliers? Yeah, more than likely. There's really big, but that's the story he makes up. But I don't think he has any background in this stuff. Neither do I. I might be wrong. Maybe he does have a background. Maybe his dad was a plumber and or electrical worker. What do you do for a living? I'm an electrical worker at a plumber's warehouse. Really? All right. Well, anyway, that's the story he made up. He's 23. What can I tell you? In case anyone missed the significance of the find, Mr. Harris made it plain what he found could allegedly be evidence of a massive operation designed to deliver Clinton the crucial swing state of Ohio. You see, a photograph, he thought, would help erase doubts about his yarn. With a quick Google image search for ballot boxes, he landed on a shot of a balding fellow standing behind black plastic boxes that helpfully had ballot box labels. It was a photo from the Birmingham Mail showing a British election 3,700 miles from Columbus, but no matter. In the caption, the balding Briton got a new name. Mr. Prince, shown here, poses with his find as election officials investigate. The article explained that the Clinton campaign's likely goal was to slip the fake ballot boxes in with the real ballot boxes when they went to official election judges on November 8th. Then Mr. Harris added a touch of breathlessness. This story is still developing, he wrote, and CTN will bring you more when we have it. He pushed the button, and the story was launched on September 30th, blazing across the web like some kind of counterfeit comet. Ugh. Even before I posted it, I knew it would take off, Mr. Harris recalled. He's so proud of himself. I knew, even before I lied, I knew millions of people would believe the lie, and then something in my country would no. Anyway, so he actually had the photograph in mind here. I guess he found this one and he wrote the rest around it. It is very interesting, too. I again, note for the record that, well, for one thing, I noticed in the screenshot that he has very, very bravely written the story at Christian Times newspaper under the byline of Admin 1. So does Cameron have the, let's say the stones to put his name to this? No, of course not. He's hiding. But now he's been found out, whatever. But he's going to try and make the most of it, I guess. So Admin 1 is our intrepid reporter here, by the way. I think probably even putting a fake name to the thing would probably help give it more credibility too, but very few people probably bothered to look at it. He's not detail-oriented, despite the fact that he imagined this whole background for the guy. Well, maybe let's say he's an electrical worker and he's working in a building that's used for short-term supply by a commercial plumber because that's suitably blue-collar. And what would the electrical worker be doing? What, there's an electrical room at the warehouse where the guy stores plumbing supplies on a short-term basis? Seriously? I don't even know. Whatever. You're supposed to believe that. Meanwhile, the picture he chose, like I said, again, is taken in what is, I think, fairly obviously the back of a moving van or panel truck. You can see, if you've ever been inside like a moving van or a truck like that, one, you can see that there are those translucent panels up top that let sunlight in so that when you're working inside the truck, it's not pitch dark. And then on the sides of the panels of the truck they have wooden planking that goes across along with canvas straps to strap things like furniture up so that they don't fall over during transport. And there's those heavy-duty moving blankets that you would put over things to keep things from getting scratched and damaged in transit. So the idea that that's the guy, in other words, has no idea what the little used, what does he say? Room in the back of the storage shed or whatever. It's a warehouse. Whatever. I don't even have to really look too far back, but the idea that that's what he thinks a electrical room in the back of a plumbing warehouse might look like, and it's like, dude, that's a truck. Remember when we were all supposed to believe that only, you weren't a real American if you didn't know somebody who knew what a pickup truck was all about or a personally owned one? How about the back of a panel truck? You've never seen that? You've never been inside a U-Haul? Nothing? That's really amazing. Oh, well, people aren't really discerning when they come to these things. So he stole the picture and faked the story. He launched the thing, and guess what? He knew it was going to take off, and he was correct. The ballot box story, promoted by a half dozen Facebook pages Mr. Harris had created for the purpose, I knew it would go viral. I just did it myself. Flew around the web, fueled by indignant comments from people who were certain that Mrs. Clinton was going to cheat Mr. Trump of victory and who welcomed the proof. It was eventually shared with 6 million people, according to CrowdTangle, which tracks web audiences. And here are a couple of the examples of it being shared over the internet, including, here's a Russian language site sharing it as well. The next day, the Franklin County, Ohio Board of Elections announced that it was investigating and that the fraud claims appeared to be untrue. Within days, Ohio Secretary of State John Husted, or Husted, I'm not sure how he pronounces that one. I think we've called his name before too, issued a statement to deny the story. A Christian myself, I take offense, I was wondering if anybody would, to reading such unbelievable lies from a publication alleging Christian ties, he said. There was nothing especially Christian about his efforts, Mr. Harris admits. He had simply bought the abandoned web address for $5 at expireddomains.net. Within a few days, the story, which had taken him 15 minutes to concoct, I guess now we know how long he spent on this one, had earned him about $5,000. That was a sizable share of the $22,000 an accounting statement shows he made during the presidential campaign from ads for shoes, hair gel, and web design that Google had placed on his site. So, mind you, this is the extent of his effort. 15 minutes, making up a story, posting it, using 5 fake online Facebook profiles to fake circulate the thing. Then it takes off, and every time someone would come to his site, Google would place ads on the site, and people would click on the ads, and he'd make money. Which, by the way, I will note for the record, I have had, I put ads on the YouTube page where we put up the YouTube version of the podcast here, and nobody clicks on a goddamn thing. And in the liberal webosphere here, the liberal blogosphere area, the online bubble in which we live, people are too damn smart to punch those buttons. They're like, I don't care what ad it is. I know when I play a video, an ad comes up, fine, sure, I have to wait 5 seconds to get it out of the way. There's no chance I'm going to click on the ad and go actually do this. What's interesting to me is the size of the audience that it takes to make $22,000 off this. By the way, here's an accounting. I have made under $4 from clicks on ads at the YouTube page over about 6 months that I've been doing it, right? So my people are too smart to click on those things. And you shouldn't go click on them artificially either, because I understand that will void the terms that, Google ads anyway. So I'm not encouraging that. Who cares? I don't need that, and I don't get it anyway. I mean, $4, you only get it once you make 100, and I have 4. So I'm never getting it. I'm not losing out on anything. It doesn't cost me anything to have those ads on there. What I'm saying is, on the conservative side, these people are just, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to know, who are the people that say, I'm in the mood for some fake news? They don't know what's fake. Whatever. I got to read this story about how Hillary Clinton is stealing the election with pre-marked ballots that were discovered in the back room of a plumbing supply warehouse by an electrical worker who's there for no apparent reason because it's a plumbing place. And here it is. Finally, thank God. The proof I need. Oh, hair gel. I need hair gel. Imagine this, right? Oh my God, I'm so into the election. I'm infuriated by stories like, I got to click on this right now. I got to read right now about the way she's stealing this election. But then again, shoes. And I do need shoes. And not only do I need shoes or hair gel. Gosh, I need hair gel. Wow, here's a picture of hair gel. I should buy this hair gel online. I'm such a fool. I've been going to the store for hair gel and comparing different kinds of hair gel and the prices. Whereas right here is hair gel that I could just buy online and have them deliver. Oh, shoes. I wonder if they fit. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Web design. Holy mackerel. Okay, maybe I won't purchase. Maybe it's imprudent for me to purchase hair gel at this juncture. but I really do want to learn more. And it does say, click here to learn more. Or maybe they were like, I'm really upset at myself for not continuing my education after high school. Oh, learn more. Look at that. I can click here and learn more. Oh, it's learn more about the hair gel. Damn it. Well, it's too late. Well, it doesn't cost me any. No skin off my nose. The guy who owns the site is going to make some money. But hey, so what? You imagine $5,000 he earns off of this thing in the first couple of days of this. $22,000 from the site altogether. $22,000 in his pocket solely from people who are, one, interested in his fake news, but not interested enough to stay focused on it. Instead, oh my God, squirrel, click. Not just squirrel, but click on that squirrel. Now, we get distracted by things, sure, right? Or you see an ad and maybe you say, that's interesting. But I almost never say, but stop what you're doing and go read about that. I'd like to learn more about hair gel. I came here to find out how the election is being stolen. What am I doing? Focus. God damn it. That's my problem. They should be advertising for ADD medications on these things. But okay, never mind. Anyway, maybe that would fix a lot of problems. Although, I don't know. Then how do you prevent people from getting interested in the fake news in the first place? That's the real problem. I'm getting distracted, right? I need ADD medication myself. And hair gel. Hold on a second. Be right back. Click, click. Okay. So there you have it. He had put perhaps half an hour of work. How to read this again? He had put in perhaps half an hour a week on the fake news site, he said, for a total of about 20 hours. He would come close to a far bigger payday, one that might have turned the $5 he had spent on the Christian Times domain into more than $100,000, but he blew this deal. Just check this out, though. The money, not the politics, was the point, he insisted. That's what he said. I'm trying to build a political consulting career, but I don't care about politics. I'm just interested in money. That actually might make some sense. I don't know. He graduated from Davidson College in North Carolina in May, and he needed to pay his living expenses. I spent the money on student loans. So obviously I oppose, lowering student loans as a matter of policy. Car payments and rent, he said. By the time he launched his fraudulent story on ballot fraud, he had found minimal success with Hillary Clinton blames racism for Cincinnati gorilla's death, a reference to the sad tale of Harambe, right? The gorilla shot after he grabbed the little boy visiting the zoo. He had done better with early morning explosion in D.C. allegedly leaves yet another DNC staffer dead, spinning off conspiracy theories about the earlier shooting death of a DNC staffer. Later, he would tell gullible readers, NYPD looking to press charges against Bill Clinton for underage sex ring. Also, protesters beat homeless veteran to death in Philadelphia. And Hillary Clinton files for divorce in New York courts. 8 of his stories would merit explicit debunking by Snopes.com, but none would top the performance of the ballot box fantasy. President Obama thought the fake news phenomenon significant enough to mention it as a threat to democracy in his farewell speech last week. There's a little more yada yada there, but that the insight that President Obama provided there was exactly that on which Mr. Harris said he built his transient business, that people wanted to be fed evidence, however implausible, to support their beliefs. At first, it kind of shocked me, the response I was getting. How easily people would believe it. It was almost like a sociological experiment, said Mr. Harris, who majored in political science and economics. By his account, though he voted for Trump, his early preference had been for Marco Rubio. Harris said he would have been willing to promote Mrs. Clinton and smear Trump had those tactics been lucrative. But as other seekers of clicks discovered, Mr. Trump's supporters were far more fervent than Ms. Clinton's. Or at least, I guess, probably a smarter way of putting it, a more realistic way of putting it is, they believed that crap, and Mrs. Clinton's supporters largely did not. At least they believed a very different brand of crap, let's say. Plus, they didn't click on the ads. So the deal that he missed out on, by the way, in late October, with the inevitable end of his venture approaching, he sought an appraisal for the web domain that by then had vaulted into the web's top 20,000 sites. An appraiser said that given the traffic, he could probably sell it for between $115,000 and $125,000. But he made a costly mistake. He decided to wait, and days after the election, and then later denounced for making the peddling of fake news remunerative, Google announced it would no longer place ads on sites promoting clearly fabricated stories. His was included, and the domain is now essentially worthless. However, all was not lost. He had put a pop-up on the site inviting visitors to join Stop the Steal team to find out how Hillary plans to steal the election and what you can do to stop her, and collected 24,000 email addresses. He has not yet decided what to do with them, he said. Asked whether he had any guilt at having spread lies about a presidential candidate, Mr. Harris grew thoughtful. But he took refuge in the notion that politics is, by its nature, replete with exaggerations, half-truths, and outright whoppers. So he was hardly adding much to the sum total. There's a bit more in this particular article, and you should absolutely take a look at it, and I will include it for you. But the upshot of this is that I told you he kept trying to build himself a political consulting business based on what? Well, as it turns out, he is an aide to a Maryland member of the House of Delegates, the state legislature, Delegate David E. Vogt III, V-O-G-T, from Frederick, apparently employed Cameron Harris, and as it turns out, according to the Washington Post, terminated him on the spot after learning that he was the mastermind behind the Christian Times newspaper.com. It says, but I believe we found out it was .net, and its fabricated September 30th article. So he's out of a job now. Harris, who graduated from Davidson College, as you know, had worked for the Republican delegate since June. He did not return a call for comment. So he's had a long career in politics, and I guess is ready to start in political consulting, and is well qualified for it, given that he says that he would have been equally willing to smear Trump in favor of Clinton if he had found that at all lucrative, but I guess he just didn't. So there you have it. Any idea why you're getting up and out of bed in the morning anymore? I don't know. I found that rather amazing and depressing, but really just kind of enlightening. And I guess a little bit depressing for my own situation, too. Like, why don't I have people that are this dumb? I keep saying I'm happy to have smart listeners, but I'll tell you, trade it for a couple $1,000s here and then. It is pretty amazing. And again, I'm amazed that he's able to attract a sizable enough audience who is willing to get distracted and click on ads for stuff that has nothing whatsoever to do with the story. I would be so excited to read that story, I don't think anything could distract me. But amazed, maybe when they were done, they said, wow, that story was so exciting, I'm pulling hair out of my head now. I really have to fix it. Oh, well, I'm low on hair gel. Oh, look, an online solution staring me in the face. Thank God for the internet. I don't know how this happens. I don't know how we make it happen. I don't know how anything happens. I don't know whether I'll be back tomorrow. I can't stand it. Tomorrow's the big day, the inauguration. We, of course, sneak our show in live before the inauguration happens, so it will still be legal for us to broadcast, so we'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll hand you off to the guys for the after show, the Thank God It's Jovedi version of the after show. Featuring what? I'll tell you. The Republican-controlled Congress is set to punish sanctuary colleges that protect undocumented immigrants, like half the cabinet. Contrary to his claims, emails show it was House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chair Jason Chaffetz, yes, who skipped out on the meeting with the ethics chief that he has threatened to subpoena. Great story. And Elijah Cummings states that if the public knows what Congress is, they'll boycott
From
the inauguration.
Daily Coos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Geez, I wonder if there's any way for the public to know what Congress knows. I wonder if they could figure anything out. On the last half, they'll be reporting on 6 federal agencies that have collaborated for months investigating covert Kremlin financial support for Trump. That was the big story that I didn't really get to, but I knew the after show would take care of you on this one. We'll talk about that, I hope, tomorrow.